Hello. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to CredX Live. This is our first episode by CredX. Every day, we bring hundreds and millions of dollars that move through the venture capital, and most people only see the headlines, right? 180 million raise, $95 million raise, and $30 million raise, right? But here is the problem. The funding news doesn't tell you what's happening. It tells you what has already happened, and our job at CredX it's very different. We decode what today's funding matters for tomorrow's startup because money leaves clues. And today, those clues tells a very different story than most founders realize. Across just 10 different rounds announced today, startup has raised $618 million with almost 80% of that capital is concentrated in just four companies. The pattern wasn't broad excitement, it was focused conviction. So let's break it down step by step. The biggest signal today for the startup and VC ecosystem isn't the AI story, right? Everyone thinks today AI was just another funding day. It wasn't. Today's story is infrastructure. Look at where investor actually wrote those checks, right? Enterprise communication, construction software, semiconductors, machine monitoring, healthcare, compliance, not AI chatbots, not AI image generators, or not any another chat GPT for this or that, right? So investors have backed businesses that are using AI to solve expensive operational problems, particularly in government communication, semiconductor timing, machine health, home building, and enterprise workflow. So that has changed everything. Because in today's world, the customer buys outcome. Nobody buys the AI alone, right? So it is something founders needs to hear who are building in today's AI world, right? Customer don't wake up wanting AI. They wake up wanting more revenue, lower cost, less risk, less paperwork, faster operation, and AI is simply just a tool. The outcome is something that what people actually buy today in AI. That's why today funding matters. And people think that money has dried up. But actually the money is back in the venture capital and it's much harder to raise nowadays. Because for the last 2 years, everyone has been saying funding has dried up. I don't think so that's true anymore. Today's market say very something different. Money exists, but conviction doesn't. Nearly four-fifths of today's discussed funding went to just four companies, right? So that's not the shortage of capital, but I think I can say it's a concentration of confidence. So that's a very massive difference. The best companies are raising, but the average companies are waiting much longer to raise the capital. So instead of asking why aren't investor investing, ask what make investor confident enough to write a check. So that's a better question, right? And what I can see is like the what my take on Credex is like capital follows certainty, right? This is my biggest takeaway for today because investors aren't paying for potential anymore. They're paying for certainty. The more certainty you are, the less fundraising feels like selling. Whether that's a customer traction, clinical milestones, or proprietary technology, certainty always wins. So for that, $180 million for messaging, right? But that's wrong. This isn't just about the messaging. The biggest funding round today went to Leap Expert. They have raised $180 million. Most people will this read this headline and think it's just another enterprise software company. I disagree. This isn't the messaging company. It's a data company. So think about what happened in the business world of AI today. sales conversation, client approvals, support chat, executive decisions. Much of it now happens on either WhatsApp, SMS, iMessages, Signal, and similar channels, right? Historically, those conversations weren't structured or governed well enough for regulatory enterprises. Leap Expert changes that. It creates the governance layer that captures and manages those conversations so enterprise can safely use them as a operational and AI ready data. That's why Riverwood Capital have invested in this round. They are not just betting on chat, they are betting on trusted enterprise data. What our insight on as a Cradex is infrastructure create moat, right? Because here is the lesson. Every founder wants to build the next AI application, right? But very few founder wants to build the infrastructure beneath it, right? History tell us infrastructure company often outlast the hype. But once everyone depends on your platform, switching is very expensive for companies. And that's exactly where the kind of businesses the investors love, right? So today, next up, we will be taking over the biotech, right? Why biotech is quietly written, right? And so we have talked about the enterprise infrastructure, but the second largest funding round today wasn't software at all. It was biotech. And what happened tells us something as important about where venture capital is willing to take risk. Let's look at Beeline Medicines, right? So let's move to the biggest second round that has happened today, that is in the biotech industry. And honestly, I think most founder will completely misunderstand this one because they will see one headline, $126 million raised, and immediately think money is flowing in the biotech again. I don't think so that whatever exactly happened. Look deeper and you will see that Beeline Medicine has announced 126.3 million Series A extension, not a brand new Series A, not a new investor coming in, an extension. That distinction matters because the extension brought the company total Series A funding to more than $426 million with existing investor including Bain Capital, CPP Investments, Bristol Myers Squibb, and management continuing to support the company ahead of the major clinical milestone. So I think that smart money has doubled down in today's story, right? If you have noticed something, most of the today's money come from investors who have already knew the company. Why? Because they already have done years of diligence. They've seen the signs, they've seen the progress. They are not buying the hype. They are just increasing the conviction what they've already believed in the early stage of the company, right? And that's a very completely different signal than a flashy first investment done by emerging VC fund, right? So what our insight is that existing investor matters, and it has always been, because if existing investor writes a larger check in the another round, pay attention. Those investors knew more than anybody else. They have inside the board meetings, they reviewed monthly updates, they've seen the challenges, and despite all of that, they've still invested. And sometimes who invests is less important than who invest against, right? So founders who are raising right now, listen up. Milestones are raising money in today's 2026 because here is something every founder should know in July 2026. If you are raising it, investors don't fund effort at all, no matter if you are working 16, 18 hours, they fund progress. Every funding round should answer one simple question: what have changed since the last round? Second, did revenue grow? Third, did customer expand? Did the margin improve? Did the technology become stronger? Did risk decrease? The clearer progress, the easier fundraising become. And today's hidden pattern for funding is that proof always beat promises, right? Because today's venture capital isn't rewarding. Big dreams, rewarding, but it's depending on credible execution. The company getting funded today weren't saying, trust us. They are saying, here is what we have already done. That's a massive mindset shift, right? So let's look at the next deal. Now let's leave the healthcare and enter one of the most oldest industry on earth, that is construction. Not exactly the first place people think about when they hear AI, but today's third largest funding round might actually one of the most important AI company on this list, right? Hierarch. So Hierarch has raised $95 million. At first glance, this sounds like a production software, or sorry, this sounds like a construction software, but it's much bigger than that. Construction is one of the largest industry and it's almost one of the slowest industry to digitalize. Builders, architect, material suppliers, contractors, everyone work on different system, right? Everyone delay cost, every mistakes cost money. So what Hierarch is doing is Hierarch is trying to become the operating system that is connecting designing, estimating, construction, and building material workflows. It says customers have shortened the development timelines and improved their margins, making the value proposition easy for investors to understand, right? So what's the real product is for the hire? Here is what Hierarch is actually selling. Not AI, not software, time. So if builder can finish project weeks faster, that's millions of dollars are saved. And that's why investor care, right? Nobody buys software. They buy outcomes. And what's Credit's take on that is that invisible AI wins, right? Why? Here is my opinion. 5 years from now, the biggest AI company won't even market themselves as AI companies, which now they do in 2026, because just like nobody says, we use cloud computing or we use electricity, right? AI will become invisible. Customer won't care about your AI technology. They care about the work that's get done faster, right? So the winner quietly has become the infrastructure. And what I can see in today's pattern is what connect these deals, right? So if you compare today biggest rounds, right? Let's compare today's biggest round. That is Leap Expert, that is enterprise communication, Beeline, that is clinical milestone, and Hierarch, that is in the construction, right? So these are the three completely different industry, and yet investors are rewarding the same thing. These are the five things investors are rewarding: hard to replace infrastructure, mission critical workflows, clear customer value, domain expertise, measurable execution. And that matches the broader theme of today's funding roundup. Investors are allocating capital toward businesses embedded in operational bottleneck rather than broad AI narrative. So my questions of the day is, will customers still pay? Right? That's the main thing. Because at the end of the day, you need to make money, right? Will customers still pay? I want every founder watching this to ask themselves one uncomfortable question. If you remove the word artificial intelligence from your website tomorrow, will customers still buy your product? If the answer is yes, you are building a business. If your answer is no, you might just be building another feature. That's a very important difference in 2026 if you're building an AI, right? So let's go to the infrastructure that nobody sees today. Canada has struck back with not just another AI app, but with $55 million check that has been raised from one tiny component. So let's head north. Because today most interesting Canadian funding round might also be one of the most important infrastructure investment announced anywhere today, right? Because most people have never heard of Strathera. But I promise you, after today, you will understand why investors just wrote them a 55 million check. Because at first, this will sound very boring for you, right? They don't build AI, they don't build robots, they don't build chat GPTs. They have built timing chips that sound incredibly unexciting until you realize nothing inside modern computing works properly without precise timing. So what does Strathera do is Strathera develop a silicon timing technology that has helped synchronize and increasingly complex computing system. So company has raised $55 million to expand production and grow its customer footprint, bringing total funding to $75 million. So what is the hidden $1 billion market that nobody is talking about, right? So think about Formula One, right? People admire the engine, the aerodynamics, the driver. But imagine every wheel is spinning at a different speed, the race will be over before it will have started, right? So computer work exactly the same way. The faster AI system become, the most important synchronization becomes. That's why the funding matters. Not because of the chips, but because of the coordination, right? And what I have seen as an Craddock's insight is boring is beautiful. Boring can be beautiful as well. Because here is something most founder rarely hear. The biggest opportunities are usually the least exciting. Nobody gets excited about databases until Oracle become worth billions. Nobody get excited about the payment rails, right? So until Stripe happened, nobody get excited about the sorry. So the biggest opportunity are usually the least exciting. Nobody get excited about the databases, right? Until Oracle became worth billions of dollars. Nobody get excited about the payment rails until Stripe made that happen. And nobody got excited about the timing chip until AI infrastructure depends on them. Sometimes the less glamorous the business, the stronger the moat. And what is the Canada's most competitive advantage in this? That deep tech wins. Canada has something unique. It doesn't need to beat Silicon Valley at everything, right? It need to win where technical depth matters. Semiconductor, quantum, AI infrastructure, advanced manufacturing. These are the industry where talent, not geography. Talent creates value. So Strathera round also signals that international investors are willing to back the Canadian deep tech companies when the technical differentiation is very strong enough. But that's not enough. AI need more than chips, right? Because everyone talks about the GPU, Nvidia. Everyone talks about the GPU, right? Nvidia, AMD, compute. But what happens after those servers are installed, right? What keeps them running? That's where today's next company come in. Machines need doctors. Meet OpenAI. OpenAI has just raised $31 million, and honestly, I think this is one of the most smartest AI companies on today's list. Why? Because they are not building AI models. They are helping keep the physical machines behind AI running effectively. OpenAI is developing a continuous monitoring system that analyzes machine fluids and detect wear before equipment fails. Its technology is already developed in data center and industrial environment where downtime is extremely expensive, right? So what is does that predict it before it happens, right? Predict failure before it goes happen. Imagine running one of the world's largest AI data center, right? You have thousands of servers, you have millions of dollars invested. Every minute of downtime costs you millions of dollars, right? So will you wait for something to break, or will you know before weeks before it fails, right? That's what exactly Women is selling. Not maintenance, but the prediction. And I think The next AI boom is something behind the scenes. This is something I don't think enough founder appreciate. The AI economy isn't just creating a software company, but it's creating entirely new industries around software. Cooling, power, maintenance, security, networking, infrastructure. Every AI breakthrough creates five new businesses nobody have predicted. And that's where many of the tomorrow's unicorns or decacorns will come from. And what we have seen in the pattern alert for infrastructure is, let's pause for a second. Look at today's biggest round, right? Yeah. Let's look at the biggest funding round today. Leap Expert, Enterprise Infrastructure Higher, Construction Infrastructure Strather, Semiconductor Infrastructure Omen, Machine Infrastructure, right? Can you see it now? Investors aren't chasing trends. They are buying the system that no other companies depends on. That pattern is visible throughout today's funding roundup, where the strongest investment get clustered around companies embedded in operational workflows and infrastructures rather than consumer facing AI applications, right? So, here is my prediction over the next 5 years that the biggest venture backed companies won't necessarily build the smartest AI. They build the companies that makes the AI reliable. Not only reliable but also affordable, scalable, governed, secure, because every gold rush create more money for people selling the tools than the people digging for the gold, right? And history has kept repeating itself. But what's the founder challenge in today 2026 is that find the bottleneck. If you are building a startup today in July 2026 in AI or any other field, don't ask yourself, how do I use AI? Ask yourself, what expensive bottleneck existing in my industry? Because that's exactly where investors are writing checks, right? Solve the bottleneck. The industry comes second, right? Because if you have solved a major problem for that industry, the investor will come for you to write a check. And coming up next, we will see the smaller checks, but they have a massive signals. So the biggest round has grabbed the attention for the headlines, but sometimes the most important lessons come from the smallest round that has happened as well. Next, we will look at the four companies that has raised less money, yet we will reveal where venture capital will be heading next. We will cover four companies. First is AI for small businesses. Second is robot inside pharmacies. Third is quiet comeback of diagnosis. And fourth is why Singapore fintech story matters. And then we will answer the most important question of the day, that what should founder build next? So this is where that Credex is becoming different from every other news channel out there, because most people think after the go after the big round, but we start looking for the signals, because this smaller round often become the next $1 billion companies, right? So don't ignore this, and let's deep dive into it. Let's be honest. So the biggest funding round always steal the headlines, right? Like $180 million, $126 million, $95 million. But here is something what I have learned after years in startup and venture capital space. The next unicorn rarely looks like a unicorn, because sometimes company raising $20 million today becomes the company everyone wishes they have invested in 5 years later. Let's look at four funding rounds that most people will scroll past, but probably shouldn't. Right? The first company is Pi. So Pi has raised $29.5 million. At first, this looked like another AI startup, another chatbot, or another voice assistant, but another company trying to automate just the customer support. But I think people are missing the real story behind it. Pi has developed AI voice agents designed for specifically for small businesses, help them answer calls, book appointments, and respond to customer around the clock. Rather than replacing the entire team, the product focuses on filling staff gaps and improving responsiveness. Right? So here is what I find impressive. That most discussion about AI ask, will AI replaces people? I think that's a wrong question. The better question is what work isn't getting done today with AI. Think about a small dental clinic, right? Or a plumbing company or a local law firm in your city. They are not trying to eliminate staff. They are just trying to answer every missed phone call. Every missed phone call is basically is every missed sales or revenue. AI isn't replacing employees. It's making sure that opportunity aren't lost. There is a much more greater strong value proposition, right? So what's Credit's take on that is, if your startup help businesses make more money or lose less money, either tit or tat, investor understand that story immediately. Don't sell artificial intelligence, but sell the measurable business outcomes, right? Let's move to next up is Q. Q has raised $20 million. This one fascinated me because pharmacies everyone faces the same problem. Because I have worked in pharmacy for like around 3 to 4 months in Saskatchewan, um, in Shoppers Drug Mart. So I know how the operation goes inside the pharmacy, right? Because this one have really fascinated me because all the pharmacy faces the same problem, like growing demand, staff shortages, more prescription, less time to fill it. So QO is building robotic automation for pharmacies, helping reduce manual work and improve precision fulfillment efficiency. The investment reflects continuous demand for workflow automation in healthcare operation, right? So if you have noticed something, that Q isn't trying to reinvent medicine, right? They are improving the operations. They are becoming the one of the most investment biggest investment theme in the healthcare, right? Automation, efficiency, workflow. Investors increasingly love this business that improve the existing system that has happened instead of just replacing them, improving them, right? Because look at the funding list today, right? Construction, healthcare, enterprise software, semiconductor, different industry. But even if they are from the different industry, they have the same strategy: remove friction. That's it. That's where venture capital keeps writing check, right? And now let's talk about the next funding company, right? Picture Labs. So Picture Labs has raised $30 million, and most founders won't pay attention to this round. I think they should. Picture developed AI powder pathology and diagnostic tools that help clinics analyze disease earlier and more accurately, supporting a broad trend towards precise machine, right? So whether we are talking about machine, building, healthcare, enterprise software, every one of the today's startup share one goal: predict problems. Because if you predict problem before they become expensive, that's where modern AI is becoming. Because go after prediction, not just the conversation, right? And the final company today, that is Cashier. Cashier has raised $16 million, and if you are the only watching Silicon Valley, you are missing half the story. Cashier, based in Singapore, has raised 16 million to expand its unified commerce platform that combines payment, point of sales, business management tools for merchants across Southeast Asia. And that is why I wanted to include this, because Innovation doesn't belong to one country anymore. Great companies are emerging from Singapore, Canada, India, Latin America, Europe, Africa, anywhere in the world. No matter where are you in 2026, you can build a next billion-dollar company. Maybe not coming from the San Francisco, it may come from a market solving completely different problems, right? So that's where the Cradex, we don't just watch the one ecosystem, we connect them. So let's zoom out one more time. What we have discussed today, right? So today's funding was not just about the big headlines, but it was about the investors that are looking at five things. I will let you know. These are the five things you need to focus on in today's funding as a founder. Companies solving expensive problems. Second, businesses embedded in critical workflows. Third, technology consumer rely on every day. Four, clear proof that product deliver value. And fifth, founder who understand their industry very deeply. Because those things appear consistently across all the funding announcement which we have discussed today, from enterprise communication and construction technology to healthcare automation, diagnostic and commerce infrastructure, right? So here is the question I will leave with the founder today. If your product disappear tomorrow, will your customer notice something? Or eventually the best startup become essential? Not interesting, right? That's a very huge difference. That next up, where is the money going, right? In the final part, we will answer the questions everyone wants to hear. And that is, where is venture capital heading next? Or what should founder build over the next 3 years? Or what should angel investor avoid? And my bold prediction for the rest of the 2026. So let's go to the final part of this session. That we spent the last almost half an hour discussing that who have raised money, right? Now let's answer the question that actually matters. What does this means? Because funding news is very interesting, but understanding the market, that is valuable. Because today wasn't just about the 10 startup raising money, it's about where investors are placing their confidence, and confidence always leave clues, right? Let's thinking back to 2021. Almost anyone with a compelling pitch deck could have raised money in 2021, right? Because growth wasn't enough, vision wasn't enough sometimes. Even idea was enough. Even just idea was enough in 2021 to raise the money from venture capital. And that market doesn't exist anymore in 2026, to be honest. Today's market reward execution. Can you prove customer care? Can you prove your technology works? Can you prove your business deserve to exist? That's a bar right now in 2026. And honestly, that's very good for startups, right? Because if I am raising a venture capital or I am raising a funding tomorrow, this is what should I should focus on. Number one is clear customer pain. Not a nice to have, but a must to have. So number one, I will keep clear customer pain. Second, proof of execution. Revenue, users, clinical milestones, pilot customers, something measurable you provide it to the investor that shows the execution proof, right? Number three is infrastructure thinking. Can your company become part of something someone else daily workflow? Can customer build around you? Because switching cost great, like switching costs millions of dollars for great businesses and big businesses. So rather than switching, it's better to improve their existing workflow efficiency. Number four is deep expertise. Today's winners weren't tourists, right? They understood their industries. Construction founders solving construction, healthcare founders solving healthcare, and enterprise founders solving enterprise. Domain knowledge matters in AI world. to how to get work done with AI. And number five, long-term trust. Trust with customer, trust with investor, trust with your team, trust compound. But I think trust is the most valuable thing in life, not just a startup and VC space, right? And here is the more probably the most important things I will say today. That is founder reality check. That don't build what fund investor have funded yesterday already. By the time you will finish building in AI, the market have already moved on much faster pace. So you still build around that won't appear in 10 years, right? Healthcare isn't going away in 10 years. Construction isn't going away in 10 years. Manufacturing isn't going away. Energy is not going away in 10 years or next 20 years, right? So best founders chase problems, not just the trends, right? And let's do the investor reality check as well in 2026, because for everyone or anyone who is an angel investor who is watching right now or an emerging VC, today's market offers a reminder that patience has become an advantage again. Because during the boom, everyone feared missing out, right? But today, the bigger risk is investing in businesses without durable fundamental. So the companies that survive usually become much larger than the companies that grow quickly and disappears, right? So here is my prediction for the next half of 2026. That won't belong to the loudest founders. It will belong to the founders quietly building product customer can't live without. AI won't disappear, but the conversation around AI will, because eventually AI have like has become like electricity, right? Nobody advertise, but we use electricity. They advertise what electricity made possible. The same thing is going to happen with AI. And these are the three industry to watch in my watch list. If I have to pick three areas and I'm watching very closely, I will pick these three industries. First is infrastructure software, because the invisible technology every company depends on. Second is the healthcare automation, because no one is replacing doctors but helping the healthcare scale to a different level. Third is industrial AI, because AI that will keep the factories, construction, energy, and logistics running more efficiently. So I think these are the three sectors that solve the greater and most expensive problems, and the expensive problems are the ones who create the most valuable companies, right? Before we wrap up for today, I want to leave you with something, that at Credx, we are not here to try to predict the future. We are trying to just understand the trends, or not just the trends, but the insight or where the market or startup and venture capital market is moving forward. So we just wanted to try to understand it. That means asking the uncomfortable questions, looking just beyond the headlines, and having conversation that doesn't fit always inside the 280 character, right? Because startup deserve more than hype. Founder deserve honest conversation, investor deserve thoughtful analysis, and ecosystem grows faster where people more, when I think more people understand how they will work. That's why Credex exists. And now I would love to hear from you guys. What was the biggest funding announcement today? Or more importantly, which company do you think everyone else is underestimating? Leave your thoughts in the comment. I will read every single one, and we will feature the best insight in the next episode, because great idea don't come from host. They come from the community, right? So next session we will do this all over again. I love doing this. This was our first session as a Credix Live, and we want to build this as a world best media company in startup and venture capital space. So next week we will be back again. We will break down the biggest funding goals along covering Canada, US, and India or rest of the world. But more importantly, we will answer the question behind every headline, because understanding the market today will help you build for tomorrow, right? So if your episode helped you see the someone's in the startup ecosystem grow differently, consider sharing it with another founder, another investor, or someone who is building very ambitious. Subscribe to Credex Live, follow Credex for startup and venture capital analysis. And if you are a founder raising capital or investor looking for the next opportunity, we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Darshil Kund, and we will see you in the next Credex Live. Have a good one. Thank you.